Hey everybody, this is Django Admin for data professionals. The core idea of this video is to show you the power of Django Admin, or specifically a really cool feature of Django Admin to quickly load data, have the ability to manipulate data, play around with the data by adding some user authentication, maybe give the ability to load scripts, maybe pull data from different sources, etc. Now, who's this video for? Let's say you're a business analyst and you work with data in a very constrained environment. For example, you're really good with Excel or maybe tools similar to Excel, or maybe you're a data analyst who works with SQL very much. You work with SQL on a very large data set, or you're comfortable writing SQLs with multiple tables joined together, and you're kind of okay with working with Python scripts. Now, let's say you are a data scientist or a data engineer. You are more comfortable with Python scripts rather than writing raw SQL. You can do a lot of manipulations with pandas or maybe other libraries. And this is where kind of Django admin kind of plays in between. Django admin, you have this really cool feature called inspect db. That's what we will try and look into, where you have the ability to quickly load data and maybe do some basic manipulations, have the ability to filter data. Now, let's say there's a project manager who does not really care about writing raw SQL, so maybe pulling some scripts, or maybe opening a Jupyter notebook to try and understand the data. He or she only cares about viewing this data and trying to understand or maybe finding some inferences from this. Now, Django admin can just play a huge role here. So what we will try and do is to actually load some data, and I have a SQLite database. I'll just show you that in a moment, and you can just download that. We will try and load that data and do some very basic manipulations with it. Now, this is the database that we'll be working with. It's the European Soccer database provided by Kaggle. It's a free database which you can download from this button here, basically. And what I want you to do is download this, extract the SQLite file, and place it into an empty folder. This will be kind of our starting point. And we'll start from here. We'll start by creating a virtual environment, installing Django, all the basic steps, and try and load this data and do some very basic manipulations and show you how Django admin plays a very cool role here. I have my terminal here. I have one file, which is the file that I downloaded from Kaggle, the database.sqlite file. Let's just inspect that, right? So if I would say sqlite3.database, I could just do that. To see the tables, I can do dot tables. So I've got this tables, which is country, league, match, player attributes, team attributes, and team. Let's just drop the player attributes, team attributes, and match table. And so I'm going to say drop table, match, and say, let's just wait for that to load. Say drop table, player attributes. I'm going to say drop table, team attributes. Oopsie. Attributes. And if I say dot tables now, oops, there you go. I've got 4 tables to work with. Pretty good for our use case. Now, let me just exit out of that and let's create a virtual environment. So before we kind of start any Python project, we kind of create a virtual environment to install the dependencies. So I'm going to say virtual env space env. I like to call it env. You can just give it anything you like, maybe vnv.env, anything you like. So I'm going to say env. I'm going to activate it using source env slash bin slash activate. And let's get going from there. Cool. So the first thing I want to do is install Django. So I'm going to say pip install Django. I'm going to wait for that. And we have Django here. And to create a Django project, what we want to do is say Django admin, which is the command line utility that Django provides. Django admin start project, and give the name of the project. So I'm going to say data dashboard and put in a dot because I did not want to go one level lower. And if you list that, we've got the project folder, and we need to create an app, right? So that's where all our application logic goes on. So I'm going to say Django admin start app and say core. You can just name it anything you like, unless or except for the names that Django has reserved. So I'm going to say just start app core, that will create a core directory for me. And let's start coding, right? So I'm going to say vim space dot. The first thing you kind of need to do is every time you create an application, you kind of add that to the installed app settings, right? So I'm walking you through this because if you're a data scientist, you might have not worked with Django before, and so that's the reason why. So if you already kind of know these, just do it quickly as possible, and we've done that. And the thing that we want to do is we want to inspect or create the models for the tables that we have, right? So, and the database.sqlite file, that's our database. So what we want to do is change the name of the database file. So if you just go down, I can actually see the database settings. We want to change this to database.sqlite. That's the name of our database file. And cool. So how do we create the models for our tables inside the SQLite file? So Django has this really cool utility called inspect.db. So we're going to say Python 3 manage.py inspect.db, and it looks into our database or into our database file and kind of creates the models for us. So we have country model and league, player, and team model. So if you don't understand what a model is, it's basically a connection between the Python world and the database world. So a model refers to, Django has this thing called ORM, object relation mapper. You don't know if you don't know, we do not have to go into the details of this, but you can play around with these models in your code, and this is how Django admin will be connecting with the database. So what we can do is redirect this to our core apps models.py. So I'm going to say /core/models.py. I'm going to create a migration now. So that would actually make the reflection. So I'm going to say Python 3 make migrations first. That detects that, okay, there are new changes in the models file. And to actually make that migration happen, I'm going to say Python 3 manager.py migrate. Now that creates the initial migrations for us. So if you were to inspect the database now, so let's just go and say SQLite3 database.sqlite and say tables. We've got a lot of other tables which is created by Django. We've got user authentication using the auth user, auth the name of the app, and user is the table name. This is a pattern that Django follows by default. So let's just exit out there. Now to log into the Django dashboard, we need to create a user, and it's called the super user generally, which has super user is the person who has admin credentials or access to the admin panel. So again, Django provides this really cool utility tool. It's going to say Python manager.py create super user, and you can just create any name. I'm going to say Danielle. I'm going to say dan@email.com and say give a password. And it's a very small password, but you can just bypass that because we're creating a super user. And we have that, right? So the first thing we're going to do is run the server, right? So I'm going to say Python 3 manage.py run server, and that will start our server. I can just confirm that right in here. And to go to the navigator to Django admin, I would say /admin. Cool. Where can I find that? So if you go to the code, I'm going to go open that. I'm going to open the core folder, not the code, the data dashboard. That's our main settings. And if you go to the urls.py, you can actually see this path, right? That's admin slash, and it routes or maps to admin.site.urls. Let me just move this comment out of there. And if I come back, so we create a user admin. So we're going to say Danielle, that was my username and my password. There you go. And we have this really cool admin here. So you can actually see the users here. So we got one user, the email I used, I'm a staff user. You can go ahead and play around with this. There's a lot of things you can do. But the first thing we're going to do is the models that we created. So let me just take a look at that. If I come here, I can see that the models that I created are listed here. So we've got country, we've got league, we've got player, and we've got team. So how do we bring these models immediately into the admin panel? So the first thing I want you to do is go to the core and open the admin.py file and import those models. So I'm going to say from core.models, import, I can say country. If I look what's the top, there you go, country, league, player, and team, right? So you can do this, and there are multiple ways to do this. The way I like to do is create a class inheriting the model admin class. So I'm going to say class country. I'm going to say admin dot model admin, and I'm going to say pass for now, right? I'm going to create 3 copies of it. Some win magic there. We've got country, we've got league. I'm going to say league admin, correct? Not country. So country admin. I'm going to say player admin, and we're going to say team admin. Cool. And I'm going to say, so the next step is to register the model with the admin class, right? So I'm going to say admin.site.register. That's something we need to do. Copy that. We've got one more. So I'm going to say country, comma, country admin, right? That's what you want to do. And do that for all of the models. So I'm going to say league admin. So I'm going to say league, comma, league admin. Player, comma, player admin. I'm going to say team, comma, team admin. Let's see if there's any errors in the server. No, we're good to go. Let me just refresh this, and immediately we have this cool admin panel. Like, so you have the name of the model here, no, sorry, name of the application here, and all the models that we registered for that application. Now, the first thing that I notice is this country and S, right? So Django does this thing called, hey, if I have a model and if I want to create the plural for this, I just add an S. Like Django does that by default, but for it works for leagues and players and teams, but does not work for countries. So how can I change that? Like that's kind of annoying, right? So I want you to open this models file, and if we were to take a look at countries, I can say this. I can say verbose name plural equals countries. And let me just refresh that, and that fixes that, correct? Immediately fixes that. Now we have some, if we open this, the countries, right? We've got some country data. Now looking at this, I can see, okay, this is Switzerland, this is Spain, but this is a list, right? I kind of want to see that data there, right? How do I do it? Now, you can actually just go into the Django docs or you can Django admin docs and look at the source code, right? You kind of, if you're a Python developer, you know a little bit of Python, you can actually realize, hey, this is kind of the string representation or the memory representation. I can actually change that by going to the models, right? So I'm going to say country, I'm going to say def underscore str. I'm going to say self, I'm going to say return self.name. And I'm going to say str, right? It returns a string representation. And let me just refresh that. And that immediately returns me the name of the country, right? Much better than what we have earlier. Now, let's go into the leagues, right? So we've got leagues, we've got country and name. Now, we don't want to do that. Like we could do the same what we did for country, but it's not really helpful, correct? We could just give a very complex string representation, but there's a much way of doing this using the Django admin. So I'm going to go to the leagues admin, and I'm going to say, hey, what are the fields that I want to display? So I'm going to say let's display equal to is the property that I'm going to show you how to find that in the Django admin. So I'm going to say list display equals what are the columns that I have. So I've got country, I've got name, right? I'm going to say country, I've got name. So that works. Let me see if there's any errors. We've got no errors, and let me just refresh that. And that's much better, right, than we had earlier. We've got country now, and we've got, hey, what's the name of the league? So maybe you could just go ahead and do this for a player. So we've got player ID. So we've got player API ID, player name, player FIFA ID. We've got birthday. So let's just go ahead and do this for all the other fields, right? So if I go ahead and say player, so let me just copy this and let's do some web magic, right? So I'm going to say create a macro. You can just do this manually, correct? There you go. Some web magic there. Perks of using Wim. You can do this list display, copy that for, I'll just do that for the team too. And let's just go if that works. Oops. Okay, there you go. Just copy this list display. I can go ahead and put that there, and let's see if everything works fine. Yeah, exactly. So we've got the players, all the columns listed here. We'll just go to the teams against listed, right? Very easy. Building this out of a React UI is going to be a heck of a job. Python, like Django, just gives this out of the box. Now, there's another really cool feature. You can just go ahead and add a player, right? You got a whole interface. You can come in, maybe you can come here and say, edit the league. Switzerland Super League, maybe add an S, save that, right? You can just come back and edit it. All of this works, right? Let's say you want to add a country from here, right? So you've got a league that you want to add, but country's not listed. You can just press button, you can just add a country, save that. If you look in the countries, there you go, right? Extremely easy. Building something in React or any other front-end framework, hooking it up with a UI or an API is a huge task. Like as a data engineer, you won't be kind of interested in doing this. So let's just show you, right? Let me just show you where I get these, correct? So you can either look it up in the Django docs, which is like very user friendly, or I could just show you the code, right? So if we open Django GitHub, if you go into Django, you can go to the contrib. That's where the admins present. They go admin, and if you open the options.py file, I can just search for class model admin. There you go, right? This is some these you can actually see all of the filters here. So some of them we use, which are list display, correct? And let's just use a couple of them. Let's just use a couple of them. Now, what if I want to filter by some column, right? And I could just use this list filter. So I'm gonna come back to our code. Okay, I'm gonna say, let's say I want to use the list filter for the team, right? So I'm gonna say list filter, and the column that I want to use is, let's say, team short name, correct? And that's there. This is it. This should be a tuple. So I'll just put in a comma there and come back, refresh that. So this kind of immediately like says, hey, these are all the team that you have. You can just filter by this, say UDI, okay, show clear all filters. AAR, you can just filter by team. If there's multiple records, are like so much easier to kind of view the content, right? Again, building a filter like on the front end and then hooking up with the API, huge task. If you're a data engineer, this kind of solves a lot of problems. Now, let's say we come to this players table, right? We kind of want to search players instead of just looking into this. Like this is paginated, there's like almost 100 pages here. So what if I want to search for a player, right? So if I go into this and see, hey, there's this search fields example. So I'm gonna come back to my code. I'm gonna say copy that, okay, and say I want to search by player name. I want to search by, let's say, player FIFA ID too, right? So I'm going to say, let's just search with player now, right, for simplicity. And there you go. So if I come back, I just got a search bar, right? I'm a Lionel Messi fan. There you go. Immediately I've got that there, right? So I'm going to say Lionel Messi. You just have that feature there. There are also a lot of small features. Like let's say you want to filter by, kind of sorted, right? So let's say if you can do that, let's filter, let's editable. I think we have sort. There you go. Like we've got sort by default. I don't have to add anything. So let's say I want to sort by height, correct? So this just does me ascending order. I can remove this by clicking this button. I can bring in the descending order using this. So it's like 208 is not the tallest. I think you can pretty much do that for most of them. There you go. You can do that for weight. Let's see if we can do that. Cool, right? I think you can just do that for almost all the columns. Now, there are a lot of features you can build with this. You can build custom actions. So for example, there's the default action that Django provides. That's you want to delete a couple of players. So let's just delete, let's say a couple, let's just delete this country that we made. I would not need that. Go, there's a prompt like, hey, we're going to delete these data. Yes, I'm sure. I can just notate That's done, right? A lot of cool stuff. And you can even change these titles, you can customize the UI, a lot of stuff. You can even just go and say, hey, what user I want to give access to, right? For example, for this user, hey, I've got this staff access, the super user status. Let's say for a specific user, I do not want to give all permissions. So because I'm a super user, I've got all of them. For, let's say, I've got a manager or a analyst who just need access to like just these four models. I can just say, hey, this is all you need. I can just drag and drop. Like maybe you just need add a team, maybe delete a player. That's all you need. A lot of features you can just customize from here.